welcome to this Christmas edition of Join the Dots in this very peculiar year. Um, this is the holiday season, whether you're celebrating Christmas or a different winter holiday. Blah, 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 blah. Let's start again.
That was it was getting a good rhythm though.
Yeah.
Yeah, now
Exactly.
I just need to think about what I'm going to say. So, welcome to this Christmas edition of Join the Dots. No, I don't want to say Christmas edition of Join the Dots because it's not going to be Christmas for everybody, is
Holiday
it?
attention.
Yeah.
Welcome to this holiday edition.
Holiday edition.
You'll upset all the fundamentalist Christians that way.
That's a plus point from my point
Yeah,
of view.
yeah, me too.
So, welcome to this winter holiday edition of Join the Dots. For many of us, we're going to be celebrating Christmas in the next few weeks, but there are lots and lots of different seasonal celebrations. And of course, this year has been a particularly difficult year, and many of us are looking to this seasonal celebration as a way of being able to salvage something from 2020 without spreading infection, I hope. We will be looking at what is the environmental impact of some of the things that we do at this time of year while trying to avoid being too Scrooge-like and bar humbug. So I'd like to hand over to Etche now, who is going to talk about some of the things that we do at this time of year and what might be their impact. Sorry. I got the
No,
end of
that's not
that went
actually
all
what I'm going to
weird.
talk about.
No,
So,
I know. That's why I suddenly thought, oh, Jesus, I don't know what Etche's going to talk about.
and also we're not. I think the beginning was fine, so we probably don't want to do it again. But the when you said, no, actually the bar humbug, we can take it from like over to Edge.
Yeah. Over to Edge to talk a
Take
little
from there.
about winter celebrations.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I can come in with like, oh, it is in UK the biggest one is Christmas. So I spoke to this reverend.
Absolutely.
I spoke to him because he works on the philosophy.
Do you
of
want me to do the
environment,
whole
whatever.
thing again? And
No.
no.
No, I think that just from there, so we
Bah humbug.
hang over to over to Edge
So
to tell us what she found about these holidays.
so over to Edche, who's been doing a little research into these holidays and what they mean to us and what we do with them. Thanks. Yeah, why am I saying thanks?
I don't know. Maybe say that again because you rushed
Yeah.
it quite a lot. Yeah, I will not be rushed. Yeah. So over to you.
So over to Edche, who's been looking at these festivals and what they mean to us and where they come from.
Yes. So there are many. Anything from the days when people worshipped nature. No, not like that.
Well, we still worship nature.
Yes, that's right. That's true. So there are So there are many celebrations during the month of December. And if I were to talk to you about all of them, the whole episode will become about talking about holidays. So you can find the list that we managed to find on our website with further links and information. Not good? Sorry.
No, it's fine. You just don't want to spend longer saying you're not going to list them than it would
Yeah.
take to list them. But no, sorry. I have a very expressive face. Ignore it.
Okay, so I won't look at you. No, it's good. So hold on.
Because I think
Okay.
with my furrowed brows.
um, so there are many celebrations during the month of December. From Christmas for Christians, there are Hanukkah for Jewish people, Buddhists, Hindus, many other religions and cultures. And of course, we celebrate the changes in nature, death giving rebirth. Was it all right at the beginning with that?
Yeah.
Nature? I just stop at nature, basically, yeah.
Well,
So-
you can say it's about the
it comes up
rebirth
later.
and return of the sun. You know, the end of the dark
But
winter.
I
or
wanted
the
to
turning.
say that later, actually.
Okay,
That's
then.
why
Okay.
I
All right,
that
fine.
to myself. But that's okay. So there are many celebrations in the month of December. All the main religions have something, and many different cultures have celebrations. And of course, to me, I think they're all linked to what happens in nature. Things die so that new things can be born again in the spring. But I spoke to a reverend that I know, who is sorry, where is it gone now? Oh, yeah, but I spoke to Reverend Canon Nigel Cooper, who's the chaplain of. So you will. God, sorry, guys. Just need to focus. I'll say this all again, so Neil, I'll start again. So there are many celebrations in the month of December. All the main religions have some, and some cultures have their festivals. And of course, to me anyway, it seems all linked to what happens in nature. Things die, leaves drop, so that new life can be born again in the spring. And there are elements of that in all these festivals, and we'll have a list of these and further details and links on our website. But in trying to understand the commonalities on these festivities, I spoke to Reverend Canon Nigel Cooper before this recording, and he's the chaplain of the Anglia Ruskin University. I met him before in my economics works, and in fact I co-authored a paper with him and many others, because he works on the philosophy of conservation and environmentalism, and his current focus is very much like mine. How do we value all the benefits nature provides us? And he reminded me the Christmas story, and he said, Christmas story in Matthew and Luke's Gospel, probably legend-based, he added, is around a pretty poor family, a village carpenter and their family, his family, an ordinarily placed person. And when you combine that with the journey to Bethlehem, it's really about a very immaterial world. It's about survival. It's about looking after your family, survival under an oppressive regime. And he was very keen to point out that actually the spirit in this festival, in the Christmas festival, but in all the others, that was it was about coming together with people. It was about seeing what you valued in them, and finding the love in each other and in the relationships that we built with each other. It wasn't about buying the latest thing on the shopping charts and spending a lot of money, but actually spending more of that even more valuable resource that is time. I think that's okay. No?
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Cool.
And I think that's the theme. I mean, give of yourself, not of stuff. And stuff if it's really nice.
So what is it? So that's what the good reverend told me. But what is it that we like or dislike about this time of year? Sabine, we have...
I mean, to me, what's important about Christmas or the winter holiday is really about sharing time, and for me, from my background, that means sharing food with the people I love, especially when we lived in the States where I grew up. I mean, what was important was getting together and cooking and eating together and spending time together. What I find more and more as I become more old and grumpy, I feel more oppressed by the consumerism and the obligations of the holidays, the need to buy and give and write and do, and the checklist of duties rather than the things that bring me joy. So in this Christmas, what I find, what I really want to do is reach out to those I love electronically, since I can't do it physically. And that might be appropriate for later, so you might want to stop. But, you know, that what it means to me and what bothers me might be what we want to pick up on.
Yeah. Well, what I really like about Christmas time in the UK, holiday time, whatever, the Christmas holiday is that week, is that everyone else is on holiday as well. And that's what I liked about Eid's when I was growing up in Turkey, that everyone had the time off, that you didn't have this pressure that you were having a time off and everyone was working, everyone was present. But it's not just Christmas, Eid traditions have changed as well, that people use that to go away on holiday rather than go and visit each other and their neighbors and families. That's like pre-COVID times. That change, obviously, the visitation is a bit limited. So the idea that everyone is doing the same thing, even if we're not together physically, that I really liked. Jill, how about you?
Well, certainly as a child, I loved the kind of anticipation, and I always thought that it ought to snow at Christmas, which I guess is an American idea actually, because it never snows in the UK at Christmas. We don't get those shed loads of snow. But as an adult, I spent years and years and years where I felt like I was just traveling around the country to, see in-laws and other relatives, and it became an awful chore. And then, of course, when you have young children, it's kind of their anticipation does make it all worthwhile. But it's really about seeing people relaxing, not having the pressure of work, all of those things, going on long walks. And one of the best Christmases I ever had, actually, I went and did a walking holiday in Italy, and that was just fabulous. It was really nice. No gifts, nothing.
It's interesting that all three of us really talk about what is important to us is that the holiday gives us permission and an opportunity to be and share with the people we love. And none of us are really talking about the presents and the stuff, but that seems to be what dominates a lot of the time and consumption and footprint, is this pressure to consume and buy. If we all just got together and had a meal with the people we loved, we wouldn't be having this episode, would we?
No, because we're not here to talk about how wonderful getting together with loved ones is. We're here to talk about how not wonderful buying lots of stuff that nobody needs.
It's interesting on that issue, Ed. When I was a kid, Christmas presents were different than what we struggle to get now. There's less delayed gratification nowadays. If we need or want something, we tend to buy it for ourselves or for the kids. Often if I want something, next day it can be on my porch. And so we don't really have this list of things that we can give each other that really make each other's lives better. When my daughter needed a tennis racket for her tennis lessons, I bought it the next day because her instructor told me. When I need socks, I purchase them. Those are the sort of things we used to get for Christmas, which pushes us to be buying things simply for the sake of buying them, because that delayed or accumulated need is not how we gift anymore, or at least not how the people around me do.
Well, I know I'm part of quite a large family. I've got 3 sisters and a brother, and we moved fairly quickly because all of them had their families as well. We moved relatively quickly to the kind of secret Santa and then nothing actually between us, so that it becomes a very, very small group of people for whom I buy gifts at all, and that those will be the people that I'm actually seeing on Christmas Day probably, because otherwise I think it does get out of hand, and you come home with a load of stuff that you don't know what to do with, and you may not need, and it may be really lovely, but you don't need it, and you've got to find somewhere to keep it.
So those things that you don't need, Sabina, you particularly have a bugbear about things with names on.
Well, no, it's not just the names on it. It's giftware. It's the things we buy because we have to buy something, often cheap tat or something funny or cutesy that is really enjoyable as you open it up and then ends up in a landfill. But as you say, also, the candle holder with your name written on it that, you can't even re-gift. I did some quick research, and the global market on personalized giftware, which is, I think, just a subset of the tat we're talking about, that very rarely has anybody really wants or needs, is over 19 billion in 2020. So
Pounds.
that
Gosh.
19 billion pounds, 25 billion dollars. So that's an awful lot of money going to that mug with your name on it that goes to the back of the cupboard, or the silly hat that you wear once.
Plus all the environmental costs of sourcing those products, producing those products, shipping those products around the world. Of course, there is the sort of employment benefit. Mustn't forget, someone is producing them somewhere, but could we not create them more useful occupations, perhaps as well, or use occupations towards more useful ends? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that brings us to what should we be producing and what should we be buying? And should we be buying gifts simply because tradition tells us to? I mean, as you've said, Jill, I mean, you guys went to the Secret Santa and then to the nothing. My kids really prefer money nowadays because they're young people starting out. We tend to try to find one or two things they can unwrap, but I spend a lot of time making sure it's something they need, because I don't want to buy things that are going to end up being wasted. It's just, I personally much prefer the sort of gifts that are the I thought of you when I saw this and might happen at any time. I mean, I particularly remember a time when you sent some Turkish pistachios in the mail when I was having a difficult day.
That's me, by the way, that's me.
Yes, Ed. That meant much more to me than if you had sent them because we were doing a gift exchange on a specific day.
Can I give a gifting tip? Sorry,
Yes.
Can I give it? So, because you talked about money, that reminded me. Last few years, I've been giving vouchers to Neil in the like I make a card. So driving license a card in the shape of a car. The advantage of gifting like that is that he forgets to spend the voucher. So I can give it the next year again. This is what's left over from the previous Christmas. I'm not an economist for nothing.
Well, I
laugh too much at my own joke, but anyway.
I mean, you have a good point about gifts of experience or time. I mean, when we were kids and had no money, we would give these little coupon books, like, we'll iron one of your shirts or whatever, and we also hoped they wouldn't be redeemed. But the idea of giving of yourself or a shared experience, rather than another thing to store in our massively overfull houses,
so of
or
course
regifting something meaningful. Sorry.
No, that's okay. We'll come back to the regifting as a solution. So the advantage of given time, of course, is that it has very little, if any, environmental costs. It has lots of environmental costs if you're traveling very long distances to actually be present next to somebody. But otherwise, the other things that, can I list the other things that we thought about in terms of having environmental impact, and maybe we'll go through them. One is travel, but we're not going to be traveling very much this Christmas, so we'll come to that actually, even though we are kind of sort of allowed to travel. Sabine has strong views about that, and we'll share that. There's food, of course. There are, things about Christmas paper, cards, crackers, tinsel, glitter, Christmas trees. I have something to say about that, and then we can go into what can we do to reduce those impacts. So travel and COVID, we're allowed, but you're not that keen, Sabina.
Well, I mean, I desperately want to see my friends and family, and I'm aching for them. However, just because the government says I can doesn't mean that it's safe. And yes, we have a reprieve, and basically what it's saying is there are enough more hospital places now for those of us that fall ill because we've gotten together over the holidays. I would much rather have many Christmases with my kids and have a Zoom one now. Everybody can make their own choice, and if everybody can distance because they have a space, or isolate first because they can, but my children can't. They have to go out to work, and we don't want to have thrown away almost 300 days of being careful.
Mhm.
I think we need to think about how we can be together apart, but everybody's going to have to make their choice. I would just warn that permission doesn't mean it's safe or sensible.
Cool. I think that's good on that. Unless you have something else, Jill. Should we go on food? Do you want to, Jill, so that you get come in, because Sabine and I talked a bit. So you would have for food. Can you say that line about let's listen to? We asked Bridget last time we spoke to Bridget Emmett about our food episode. We asked her what she would be cooking for Christmas meal, and then we'll cut into Bridget's slot. Sorry,
and then you might also talk about nodding to our previous issues about food waste as well.
Yeah, but you can come back to that. You got
but
that.
I mean,
but
Jill
I just want to break
lead
us.
that whole.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I'm suggesting
right,
there's the food waste. I thought you had an interesting quote that they were saying that the footprint of cooking the Christmas dinner is better when we get together, but of course we may not be able to this year. So all those issues, Jill, you can lead. You put it in, and I thought that was very interesting. It's early on. Let me find the page.
Can you see that, Jill? Yeah.
So which bit are you referring?
Oh yes,
the carbon
it's on page
trust.
1. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the carbon
it's
trust.
It's on page
is,
1. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and again, nod that may be great advice, but not for this year. But I thought it was a really good comment.
That's right. Yeah. So, is that all right, Jill? If you
okay, let's give it a go. Let's just say. So, thinking about Christmas food, actually, in previous years, the Carbon Trust actually recommended that if we were living a normal life at the moment, which clearly we're not, then inviting as many people for Christmas actually does help cut down on the environmental costs of Christmas by, share one large turkey or whatever, and there may be more to say about that, the choice of food as well, rather than lots of people cooking separate Christmas dinners or festive dinners in their own homes. But this year, obviously, we can't do that. We've been given advice, and Sabina's a shining example of what advice to take and when to follow your own good instincts. But we have done a couple of episodes on food, and we asked our guest Bridget Emmett.
Yeah, don't do it like that.
Yes, I know, I can't do it. So I suddenly had this thing.
I think it's Emmett, yes.
Emmett, yeah.
So we've done a couple of episodes on food recently, and we asked our guest Bridget Emmett what we should be cooking at Christmas.
What she didn't say what we should be, actually, because we said what.
Let's just do that again.
Yeah, her thoughts about the Christmas dinner.
We asked her what she will be cooking.
The festive dinner. So
what she will be cooking for Christmas.
We've done a couple of episodes on food recently, and we asked our guest Professor Bridget Emmett what she would be doing at Christmas this year. No?
Her thoughts about the Christmas dinner. Yeah, because she's talking about it being local and stuff.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so we have done a couple of episodes on food recently on Join the Dots, and we asked our recent guest, Professor Bridget Emmett, what her thoughts were on the festive dinner.
Lovely. And then we link to the Bridget's cut, Neil, and then we come back, and Sabina says, that's great. There's also the food waste issue we covered.
I thought Jill should lead on all the food issues because I've already done my grumpy bit, for balance. If Jill wants to,
so do you want to read that bit? Or
well, I won't read it, but I'm just absorbing it. So I think, given in our previous episodes, we've also talked about the food waste that we create, and at this time of year, it's one of those times when people always buy too much. And thinking about how we use leftovers is very good, and what we can share. There are a number of people who are not going to have a very good Christmas this year because they've lost their jobs or they are suffering. So it's worth thinking about that. And it's thinking about how we can, use freezers, etc., to make sure that we don't create so much food waste.
I
Yes,
find it's
there's some.
really hard to scale back some of the traditional cooking. I mean, there, I'm going to start that over because you
Yeah.
can use it or not. But I find it can be hard to scale back some of the traditional cooking. I have read that there's a shortage on small turkeys, and because people are used to buying very huge ones, there are a number of things we traditionally make that we tend to cook in bulk, and we have to be mindful about making fewer biscuits or freezing some of the dough, as you say. But I did want to say the thing about the shortage of smaller items, so we might want to talk about that. I don't know where I read that. Was that here?
No,
And
no,
in,
that was covered in the news.
Yeah.
yeah.
That some of the turkey producers are adapting
Hmm.
by selling turkey crowns instead of whole crowns. But we've also discussed that in before, in that these businesses, it's not very easy to necessarily change your traditional business. If you're a
No.
turkey farmer just set up to sell live turkeys, for example, changing on to actually selling just crowns, it's a massive investment for your business,
Well, even
in terms of
even
processing plant, etc. So yeah.
and and you can't just grow smaller turkeys, even if we're not talking about crowns, but just
Not within
smaller
the weeks.
turkeys
Yeah.
to be available at the
Yeah.
right time.
Yeah.
It's hard to adapt your business model.
And of course, turkeys, if we're talking about the UK, which is where the three of us reside at the moment, turkeys are not traditional. And I think in my childhood, I think we did used to have chickens, which do come in smaller sizes.
Yeah. In Turkey, we have chicken.
Coming
Sorry.
from a German family in California, we always had goose, and
Mm.
although geese are rather large, there's a lot less meat on them, so we didn't have these masses of leftovers.
Other
So,
alternatives available, especially nut roast.
nut roast.
Thank you.
Oh, we had a vegetarian friend for Christmas dinner last year, and my daughter made the most beautiful mushroom and chestnut pie for her. We envied it as we ate our turkey.
Yeah, not my favorite. Okay, so is that enough for food?
I think so.
Cool.
I think we probably want to go on to the other stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
The
So Christmas paper, crackers. Do you have anything to say, Sabina? Did you want to cover that? Um,
I can have a go at it, and you can use it or not.
yeah. Well,
One
we need
one
to use something because
right. One thing about the whole Christmas tradition is a number of the things we do are single is to use purchase and use single use items such as wrapping paper, often with metallics or plastics and mylar that aren't recyclable, Christmas crackers, which are only partially recyclable, usually with plastic tat in the middle, glitter, which we're recognizing is a microplastic risk source, and a number of other single use items that you can walk into stores and the shelves are covered with them now. I would argue that we should step back and think about what we do and don't need. I've been trying to wrap with reused paper or scarves, or we can print on the brown paper wrapping that's coming in a lot of our shipments, or simply put a ribbon on the box an item comes in on, or be sure that the items we're using are recyclable, and maybe that the crackers don't have plastic rubbish inside that you don't even remove take from the table but clear directly into the bin.
or not have any crackers.
Yeah, well, I
Bah humbug. Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's all that, if you're imaginative, you can probably find alternatives to crackers, which again, it's all about the excitement of the hidden and seeing something and getting a
Mm,
surprise. Could be a
nice.
sprout, I guess.
Could be what?
like
A sprout, Brussels sprout.
I
like advent
do
calendars.
like Brussels sprouts. Um, excellent. That's all. Oh, what I can add on that, on our website you can find a lot more information about the waste that we're dealing with from these single-use items that Sabina listed. Yeah,
And a lot of
I'll say something like that. No, I'll say this again because it had a question mark at the end.
And we've touched on a lot of these concepts in previous episodes about PPE and other things. The principles are the same. If you can use something that's either reused or repurchased or recyclable or reusable, you should prioritize that over something that is going to be in a landfill forever after 2 minutes or 2 seconds of joy.
That's right. And you can find on our website some more of information about what kind of problems these short-lived one-time use products land us in.
Edge, I think you have an interesting analysis of an example about the conundrum of whether to have a natural or a plastic Christmas tree and the trade-offs involved in that decision.
Yes. Yes, I did look at it because it was one of the decisions that I was grappling with. We have a very small flat, 2 cats that love climbing up things. So we probably won't get a Christmas tree this year because we're staying at home as well. But I had the research, and actually the oldest article I found about Christmas trees, whether to buy natural or artificial ones, was from 1965. I was very surprised. Shouldn't I have been? I don't know. And they were looking at the sort of sales volumes of natural versus artificial, and they were saying in 1965 that there were more and more people switching to the artificial option, but the speed with which that switch was happening was slowing down. So it must have started even earlier. I guess maybe in the 50s when plastic was a fantastic product and saved lots of things. So I looked at as an example of kind of looking at the life cycle of products. So there are things to concern about the raw material that makes the tree. So in the natural case, it is the tree, and artificial is obviously plastic, oil-based. And then I looked at things about production process, transportation, and what happens to the tree after Christmas. So for natural stuff, it is the tree that we know, and it's usually, across the countries that grow Christmas trees, the producers say that they plant usually 1 to 3 trees. Oh God, the tongue twister. 1 to 3 trees are planted for each one that's cut. Of course, trees capture carbon as they grow, and the younger trees, because they grow faster, they capture more carbon. But the catch there is that they are planted in mono-species, single species plantations, and if you use a lot of fertilizers or pesticides while you're growing Christmas trees, you are kind of negating the carbon benefits and avoiding sort of oil emissions from the artificial tree. So the recommendation is that new plantations for Christmas trees should really go on landscapes that can't do anything else. Don't cut down the pristine forest and turn that into a Christmas tree plantation. But I don't think that's happening a lot or at all. And also don't use herbicides, so the things that sort of stop weeds from growing in the plantation. That's the recommendation during the production of Christmas trees. When you look at the plastic trees, you're talking about oil being the raw material, and of course plastics production with associated emissions and chemicals and health risks and environmental risks, and emitting carbon as opposed to the natural option, which is sequestering carbon. When it comes to transportation, of course, buying trees that is produced as locally to you as possible, reducing the distance traveled, is a good thing. And for artificial trees, they're usually made in China. So they are traveling a long distance, even if they're shipped, which is a slightly lower emission per mile traveled, but still they're shipped from further away. And then what happens to the tree after Christmas? The studies say that you need to use the same artificial tree at least for 10 years for it to have the same carbon footprint as the natural one. And really, are you going to use the same artificial tree for 10 years? Some people will, some people won't. So we can't enforce that time, but that's what you need to know. And it's a bit like the cotton bags. It's better to have cotton bags compared to plastic, but not if you got hundreds of cotton bags at home. We might cut the cotton bag one anyway. Well, for Christmas tree, natural Christmas tree for post-use, uses that allow for carbon to be stored in the product, post-Christmas tree product, are better, of course. So, like, for example, turning them into wood chips for ground covering, like in playgrounds or in public gardens, because the councils collect Christmas trees to use the wood chips for that, for example. And they're also, if you're doing that, they're also replacing an oil-based alternative material for ground covering, for example. That's also good. Anyway, my conclusion is that if you're going to buy a Christmas tree, I think it's better to buy a natural one that is grown as locally to you as possible.
Yes. Sorry, do you want to say that again?
Yes. So my research, I'm no expert on the subject, but what I've read is that if you're going to buy a Christmas tree, buy a natural one.
So the point I was going to make, which I don't know the answer to, but I'm assuming that if you turn Christmas trees into wood chips, then they break down and release their carbon or other, well, they rot, so they're releasing other greenhouse gases, aren't they? I don't know, Sabine.
Well, it's like using paper and other renewable products. I mean, they will eventually break down and be biodegraded, but a portion of that becomes humic materials, which remain in the soil and enrich the organic material and nutrients. So throughout the whole cycle, when we use renewable materials, they may, during biodegradation, partially release carbon, but that's carbon that was captured previously. It's like when we burn wood rather than coal. I probably want to repeat.
No. Yeah,
or you want
it's
to
in the same
that
same carbon cycle.
It's in the same carbon cycle.
Yeah, that's what you want to say.
Yeah. So some of that, naturally, some of it, when it biodegrades, will eventually be consumed and respired by invertebrates and microorganisms, releasing the carbon. And some of it will enrich the soil, becoming more resilient humic material for a period of time. But it's like when we choose to burn wood rather than coal. It's not fossil fuel. It's part of the same carbon cycle. So it has a smaller impact than digging up fossil fuels and releasing arguably permanently or much more long-term stored carbon. So there's a benefit there, even if there's some released. I think there's another issue we want to talk about, Ej, when we talk about natural trees, which is the cut versus live tree challenge, and whether that is a realistic
if you have the space, definitely that buy one with roots that you can keep in a pot, for example, and then you can use the same tree for a few years, or you can plant it in the garden. But like us, if you're living in a flat, you're not going to be able to do that very much. But there are services developing now. The Free Cycle community has a rent a tree service. We'll put the link on our website. And I must say, before we close the Christmas tree part, can I please say I found something called the Christmas tree worm, and it lives on the corals, and that's the picture we hope to use for our episode. But please search for the Christmas tree worm and see how incredibly beautiful this worm is. It's just out of this world, I want to say, but it's actually in this world. The world is full of beauty that we don't realize. I'm just in awe of these things.
As an oceanographer that looks at
You
benthic
knew.
communities and stuff, I would argue, yes, marine worms rock.
You knew, and you never told me, Sabina. You never told me about the Christmas tree worm. Okay, enough of Christmas trees. So what can we do about this? And I think the thing that we wanted to cover, I think I was really loud there because I got very excited.
You were, but it's cute.
Sorry. So what can we do about this? And we really want to particularly talk about regifting, right? Or we particularly want to talk about thinking differently about gifts, and perhaps we also footnote want to squeeze the not falling for the sales thing, or are we going to leave that one out?
We're going to talk about, we didn't get to Black
Friday.
Let's talk about it now, and it can go wherever it fits, right?
Yeah, I think it will fit here. So enough about Christmas trees, but let's talk about to end the episode what we can do, and we thought that what we can do is have very control over our gifting, and not fall for things like mega sales before Christmas. Black Friday just gone. Something like that.
Jill, did you want to get into Black Friday, or do you want me to?
So let's just think about what we want to say on Black Friday is the fact that actually recent research has shown that actually
Absolutely.
That
I can read that
these are not actual reductions, but maybe even before that we need to think about our kind of gift giving strategies and what's the right word?
So Sabina mentioned a little bit of that earlier, but we can delete that from earlier, and you can start about that.
So I think
we can move it here.
Also,
yeah, okay.
That was about wrapping. Actually,
while you're talking about whether it's really a sale, I'd also address that it's really sort of a psychological incentive to overconsumption. But it's so cheap doesn't look at the externalities. What is cheap.
Yeah.
Which also we talked a bit about. Do we want to bring all that giftware stuff here? It may not be possible to move.
No, but in the sale thinking, the frenzy of consumerism that is things like Black Friday, where you're not even saving money, but you're drawn in to almost competitively consume.
So shall I then say again, like, it's enough about Christmas trees, and we wanted to talk about what we can change. And one of the things that we can change is the way we gift, and not, some of which we talked about already, but we haven't talked about the temptations that we're
way we buy and the way we gift.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah. And then Jill can dive into Black Fridays and sales to start.
So Jill, do you want to say a few words on the Black Friday? And if you want, I can read this quote from which is like.
What I could say is, these winter festivities are surrounded by temptation, both if you're looking at Christmas, both before and after. We have Black Friday towards the end of November, and then we have the January sales afterwards.
Cool. Okay.
And both of these, I think, research from which, I think, Etche, you've seen this, shows that really these are temptations that are fake.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So can we do that again, though? Can I just do this enough of Christmas trees and blah blah?
I would suggest you invite her to talk about. Then Jill might have some thoughts on how we buy and how we gift.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to mention Black Friday. She can.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. That's why. Okay.
How we buy and how we gift.
Cool. Okay.
Or something.
Yeah. So. Okay, enough of Christmas trees on land or in the sea, but we want to now end the episode talking about what we can do and what we thought is within our power to influence and change is what we can buy and what we can gift. Jill.
So the winter festivities are always surrounded, not surprisingly, by an enormous amount of temptation. We have Black Friday at the end of November. We have January sales after the solstice or Christmas or whatever you're celebrating in your household. And of course, I think there's plenty of research to show that actually the price reductions are not true price reductions. You can usually buy 85%, I think, which found of these goods are available at lower prices throughout the year. but also we need to think, in order to resist these temptations, we need to think about what the impact of gift giving is and what we really want to give and what's going to be most meaningful to the people that we love. And that might not be a gift at all. It might be finding something in your cupboard that you know somebody would like or could use more usefully than you. Or it might be going down the Secret Santa or the no giving route. I think, Etche, you are planning on re-gifting this year, are you not?
Yeah, especially to one friend. Actually, I was tidying up one of the drawers in my cupboard, and I found something. Actually, it's a necklace from the late 1980s that I know, late 1980s that I used to wear, but I don't wear it anymore. And I have a younger friend who is following the fashion, and I think she'll appreciate that present. And it looks new. I mean, and she listens to this podcast. She'll now know what it is, but hopefully she'll open the gift before she hears the podcast.
I think that's a lovely approach.
And it's only lovely, Sabina, because you talked about regifting. And that's why I thought I wouldn't have done it if you didn't say.
Oh, that's nice to know.
Yes,
I think we do need to examine that the feeling often that re-gifting is sort of cheap or tacky rather than a way of passing on the love. I mean, more and more I'm looking at the many things we own that actually do mean something to me that I want to share with people I care about. We have a lot of beautiful old books and things, and in the last year we've gifted some of those books that really mean something to people we care about, not because we couldn't afford to buy them a gift, but that we wanted to give them something that mattered.
And actually, and so, just because sorry.
No, sorry. It requires a change in thinking as well.
And because of that change that you talked about regifting in the past, that I went through my drawers the other day and I found at least one present, a necklace from the 1980s that I will regift to a friend who listens to this podcast. And I hope she'll like the necklace and she'll like the thought. But I wouldn't have done it if you didn't tell me about regifting, Sabina. And I just wanted to say thank you to you for that. I wanted to record that again, much neater. And also there were sirens outside, which I think will be audible because it was really loud right at the end. And this order is better. So Sabina talks about regifting first, and then I come in, and I'm doing it now. Cool. All right.
And then, do we want to say something about so this year, one of the things that many of us have missed is the company of others. And actually, when we think about giving, think about in 2021, it might be possible that we can meet up again. And maybe it's thinking about shared experiences and time rather than stuff.
Well, also, that's a really good point. And I find my daughter's boyfriend really prefers being given an experience than things. He has very little interest in things. So the idea of giving of your time is special. I have other friends that how they give their time is homemade gifts or crafts. I love getting something that somebody made for me. And I'd also like to put in one more little plug for buying local. There are a lot of artisans and local independent businesses that are struggling this year. If we can figure out safe ways to buy and give from them when we're buying gifts rather from the global conglomerates, we will have a healthier economy to emerge into.
Without naming names, I'd say don't buy from businesses who don't pay their taxes.
Yeah.
Or who don't pay appropriate taxes. I refuse to do that. I pay my taxes. Why should I contribute to someone else's income who don't?
Vote with your dollar or pound or euro.
Indeed.
So do we want to do a quick summary?
Yes, you did actually very nicely. And I don't think I need to I need to go back to which, because you said the 85% one, and we'll put the which reference,
So,
the article in the references.
do, do you see the points I have in my little blather under summary, Joe? I think you give the best summaries, but have a look at some of those
I
points
might
if
have
any of them
moved.
resonate
Oh
for
yes,
you.
yes. Point is
Yeah.
not to suffer. Yeah, and maybe then at the end we can say there's one thing. So give the most precious thing this year your time and attention, something like
Well,
that. It's a
and
bit cheesy.
remember that we can reach out to people electronically, and many people need us to. But also that holidays can be performative, and you can refuse to buy into the competitive consumption.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Yeah.
those are what I thought were important. But
yeah, yeah.
So I think this week we've been talking about winter festivities and the environmental impact of those. And I think what we've come to the conclusion is the need to have a sort of more thoughtful celebration this year. Try not to create food waste. Think about what we're buying, what we're eating. Try not to buy or resist the temptation to buy stuff for people who may not want that stuff, but think about what we've already got in our cupboards that might mean something to somebody else. Think about whether actually they prefer your time and attention rather than a gift. And I think finally, I think Etche, in a very practical way, has looked at the environmental options of looking at natural versus plastic trees, and it seems to me that the natural comes out tops every time there. So after this very, very difficult year, remember that this is a time for renewal. As the new year comes in, spring awaits us. We're going through the darkest part of the year in the northern hemisphere, and it's a time for optimism and thoughtfulness, and hoping that 2021 is going to be a better year for all of us.
Hallelujah. No.
That was a bit cheesy. Shall I do
No,
it
it's
again?
okay. If you want, yeah. But don't say it this week.
Okay.
Say in this episode if you're gonna do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And maybe don't not the Christmas tree one perhaps, because I've done
Yeah.
it
It
to
felt a bit
death.
clunky. Yeah.
And I've
Okay.
spent so much time on it as well.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay. So, in this episode, I think we've looked at the impact, the environmental impact, particularly of winter festivities and celebrations. And I think we've come to the conclusion that we all need to be a little bit more thoughtful and resist the temptation to just buy stuff, whether that's food, whether it's gifts for people who may or may not need them, and to think more about what do we really need, what do we really want to eat. Are there things in our cupboards we can give to people that they would really appreciate, not that we're just emptying them? Um, and just
No,
lost it
it's
all
good.
there.
It was
One
good.
last, third time lucky.
Yeah, always.
can you say something? I there focus on what gives you joy,
Yeah.
or how you can share joy, or is that not you?
That's very American in my view.
All right.
No,
Like
but
you-
I think not the joy necessarily, but I think
Yeah,
the
no, I'll
point
try.
that don't
Let's-
stress about it. You know,
Yeah,
these
Right.
things
no,
are not
let-
just us being
I'll try-
thoughtful about others, but actually it's an easier time for
Yeah.
you as well. I
Right.
think that's the
Yeah.
thing.
Don't
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
things just because they're expected, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
tailor and
The same
select.
thing as like don't spray your house because someone is telling you that it needs to smell of flowers. you know,
Right.
that
Yeah,
kind of-
that's
it's
my
the same
point.
idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, in this episode, we've looked at the impact of winter festivities on the environment predominantly. And a lot of the things that we have been used to doing have a very, very poor impact on the world around us and are probably unnecessary. So I think what we've come to the conclusion is that this year, after a year of immense change and suffering, that maybe this is the time to change the way we celebrate the winter solstice, Christmas, or any of the other festivals that happen at this time of year. Maybe we need to think a little bit more about actually what we eat, who we eat with, trying to reduce our food waste, Maybe we need to think about resisting the temptation to go on a spending spree before or after the December festivals. Maybe we need to think about whether we have something that we can give that's going to be more meaningful to somebody, either our time, or maybe there is something that we already own that we could give to somebody who would appreciate it more. So I think at the end of this really difficult year, this is a time to think about change, about changing the way that we do things,